Welcome back to Beyond the Uniform. I'm Justin Asiri, and my goal is to help members of the military community thrive in their post-service career and life. Today's episode number 375, 2 Journeys to Find Purpose.
And one of the things that I realized, and I had this kind of big aha moment, was that I've been putting myself into this tiny box, and I have been limiting myself because I thought that I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough this, enough that. I mean, take your pick. I just didn't feel like I was good enough to do a lot of the things that maybe I wanted to pursue, or or the things that I'm currently pursuing, like motherhood, and I think this process completely tore down my perspective on that. And I have been feeling so much joy at the idea that I have an identity outside of that box that I had put myself in. And that not only am I not that person, but I have unlimited potential to be whoever it is I want to be. And that for me was a real game changer.
In so many of the 375 interviews I've done, veterans talk about their journey to find a new purpose in life. That's come up in countless conversations with friends of mine who didn't serve in the military as well. I think it's a pretty fundamental part of what makes us human. That's why, as many of you know, earlier this year I teamed up with Craig Filek to co-lead a program called Purpose Mapping to help people in the military, as well as military veterans and military family members, identify their current purpose in life. That's a pretty lofty mission, and I'm humbled to say that 2 cohorts into this group later, we are delivering on that promise and that mission. For today's episode, I invited 2 people from our latest cohort onto the show to talk about their own journey to uncover their life's purpose. I am so grateful that they were both willing to do so. It is obviously very deep personal work, and so I admire their courage and willingness to talk about this. I love both of today's guests. They represent 2 very different perspectives, one on active duty for many years to come, the other several years out of the military. They are siblings as well, which made for a really incredible experience. I just wrapped up spending 12 weeks with them and the rest of the group, and greatly admire and respect both of them, and am so honored to have them share their stories on the show today. If you're interested in this, it is something I deeply believe in and am committed to continuing to do. If you're listening to the show in real time, on November 18th at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, we'll be hosting a free 90-minute webinar where you can experience this firsthand. Do not wait to reserve your spot. Go to beyondtheuniform.org/purpose to get more info and claim your free spot. That is beyondtheuniform.org/purpose. I would love to see you there. I would love the chance to work with you. And I would love, love, love to get this work out in front of more members of the military community. So please help me in spreading the word. Again, that is beyondtheuniform.org/purpose. Thanks. And with that, let's dive into my conversation with Becky and Brian. Well, I have 2 guests today, Becky and Brian. I'm so grateful for each of you joining me. I have just spent 3 months, which is kind of crazy, 3 months together with you and a larger group. And I'm very excited to have you on the show to talk about your experience with purpose mapping. But maybe to start things off, I'm going to deviate. Normally, I would read an introduction about each of you, but I'll start with Brian. I'd love for you just to share anything you'd like listeners to know about you, especially as it pertains to prior to joining the purpose mapping journey.
Well, good evening, Justin. Thanks for having me. My name is Brian. I've been in the Navy for a little over 24 years now. I've been a submariner that entire time and started out as a young junior officer all the way up through command, and I'm actually now a Commodore. So I've had a lot of experience in the Navy, but we all have to get out at some point. And I've been thinking a lot about what comes next for me, and does that include the Navy or not include the Navy? And I had a lot of uncertainty and about that, and just a little bit of a lack of clarity. And a classmate of mine posted a short introduction to purpose mapping, looked at it and thought, hey, that could be something that could help me kind of hone in on what I want to do. And I'm really glad that I went through it. And that's how I got involved in purpose mapping.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. How about you, Becky?
Yeah. Hi, Justin. Thank you again for having me. This is awesome. So a secret that I'll tell you, well, you already know, but I'll tell your listeners, is that Brian and I are actually siblings. So I also went to the Naval Academy like Brian because I wanted to follow my brother's footsteps. I actually did something a little different and took my commission in the Army instead of the Navy. I spent 10 years in the Army as an Apache pilot. And then I got out. I still have two kids at the time. And it was becoming increasingly difficult. I think that the deployment op tempo was pretty hard to maintain a family and stay connected to my kids. So I decided to get out about 5 years ago now. And I've done a little bit of work as a project manager and program manager, and have kind of wended my way throughout the civilian world. And I came to purpose mapping because although I'm already out, I was kind of at this crossroads, and I was feeling like I was about to kind of take off some of the hats that I wear a lot of the time and transition into new roles. And I didn't know what that would look like. So I wanted some help, and Brian recommended this to me, and I joined the group, and I'm so thankful that I did.
Yeah, Justin, when
Go ahead.
I had done the little intro session with you and Craig, and it was maybe a week later, I was talking with Becky, and she literally said, I don't know what my purpose is. And the light bulb kind of went off in my head. I'm like, hey, let me shoot the intro video over to her, let her see what it is. But it just seemed like a real good fit, because she had said all of the things that we had talked about in that intro. And I was like, this is perfect. So.
And I remember having that conversation with each of you of kind of like, would it be okay to be in here with a sibling? And I remember having that conversation with Craig, and I'm so glad that we did. It was, just from my perspective, so cool seeing you both interact and be able to add these insights for each other. But I'm actually curious, did you, not to jump too far ahead, but did either of you feel like you learned something new about the other person through this, or was it stuff that you already knew about them?
I'll take that first. I have to be honest. I learned a lot about Brian through this process. There's a pretty big age gap between us. It's 11 years. And I think that sometimes we can get kind of stuck in the role of older sibling, younger sibling, and there's that dynamic. And I think of Brian in a certain light, but this experience for me was really a blessing in disguise. I got to know Brian so much better, and I felt a lot closer to Brian throughout this experience than I have in the past. And it just put Brian into a new light. I think both understanding his perspective on his own journey, but also to see him comment on other people's journeys and to help them along the way. It was really enlightening for me.
Yeah, I think I echo that, that role-playing piece. Becky has always been my younger sister and somebody who I've always tried to take care of, but at a distance, because we are 11 years apart, and I was gone in college, and being an adult, and she was still in school, and so that was the last time we lived together, was me remembering her as this little kid. So getting a chance to talk in a public forum, although a small group, as a peer and as an equal was enlightening. And it was I went in with some hesitation, but I'm really glad that we were there together, because we are able to, we could hold each other to account, because we do know each other. And, when I was struggling with something or didn't want to admit something, either during the calls or during the week when, we would just talk, she could hold me to account and be like, oh, I think this or that. So I did learn a lot about what is motivating and worrying Becky, and can feel like I can support her a little differently now.
I just loved seeing you two just so beautifully support each other, and you're kind of, I got to see these glimpses where you were repeatedly cheerleader for the other person. And it's great that you had that. But one thing that comes up for me when you both say that is I almost view it like in a browser setting terms of clearing your cache and just kind of getting out all the old stuff. And I can see how for each of you, it kind of clears out the old story and in ways you can see new aspects of each other. But I also wanted to highlight that for listeners. I know Becky used that analogy of wearing different hats. And I feel like for all of us, or I'll speak for myself, you do wear hats throughout your life, and you get these identities thrust on you. And, what might have given me purpose or identity at one point in my life, 5 years later, it's very likely that's changed, but I might not even realize that's changed. So it's one of the things I appreciate about this process is just forcing the cache to be cleared and forcing to see things new about yourself, but in your case, in both of your cases, in each other as well. I'm wondering, maybe we start with Becky. We can start with you. But what was the process like for you? I know this whole thing is a little bit different, but as you went through it, what was this process like for you?
That is a great question. And I do think it was different for Brian. I think we experienced it differently. And so for me, I, um, I, I was really ready for this, right? Like I dove in head first because I was feeling lost. I was feeling adrift. And so I was like, no, this is something that I need in my life right now. And I felt really clear about that. I think at the beginning of the process, because I had so much motivation, it felt really easy kind of right off the bat. Whereas I noticed maybe some other group members were struggling a little bit, maybe not struggling, but they just had a harder time kind of, I think, sinking into the process. And then I got somewhere midway, and I think was I wanted to keep that motivation, but I was struggling because I started to confront some things about myself that weren't bad, but they really challenged the status quo that I had in my mind about who I was. And so I think that became really hard for me. And I struggled a little bit towards the middle, and even maybe into the end of it. Although I feel like I started to kind of come out onto if it was like a U, I was hanging out at the bottom of that U, and then I started to kind of climb out of it. And I that was really it's really nice. I feel like at this point I have the tools to finish climbing out of the U, and get myself set up for continued long-term success. But I think at first it was really easy, and then it became a lot more difficult for me, just because it really is. There's that breaking down process, and I think I stayed in that for a little bit.
I love that. I haven't heard that before, put that way, that you analogy. And it does seem like, at least the story I have is that people who want this true view of themselves of as they are in this moment, not historically or not what they've been told, it bears, you have to kind of take everything. You have to take the things that you love about yourselves and the things that I'll just speak for myself, the things that I wish I could change or that I wish were different. And when you're confronted with the reality of it, it can be difficult to accept both sides. But I found that when I do, I'm able to just be more realistic about my strengths and weaknesses and where I thrive or where I need to work. And so I really like that you analogy. What about you, Brian? What was the experience like for you, or the process like for you?
Well, I did not start out. I I did not start out having success. I think I struggled early on, and it wasn't a struggle from like it was hard or whatnot, but I kind of entered it thinking there was a right answer. And the first several weeks, I just kept trying to do it right and get the right answer out of the process. And in hindsight, that was never going to work. So you really had to trust the process and go through it, um, and then to get to the other side. And I'm glad I did, but I'm glad that I did it the way I did, because I kept going back and forth through the first 3 weeks. We'd be on week 3 and I'd go back to week 2 and then I'd go back to week 1 and I'd try to study that stuff again so I could get to the right answer. What I didn't realize was that was just helping me figure out the next steps to take in the process. And I think I gained, once I gave into that and stopped trying to come up with the right answer, I started just gaining some momentum. I feel like I finished on a pretty high note. I have a real good sense of what I want to do over the next several years, with some real actionable things that I can do. And there's days where I'm waking up now feeling like there's not enough time today to get done the things I want to go do. And so that's pretty exciting. It's been a long time, at least for me, where I felt like that. And I think, that's just going to help me out at work. It's going to help me out at home. But it was an exciting journey to have gone through. And we really did see it different ways. Becky started out strong. I started out slow. Other folks in the group, we had the whole gamut. And so I think if somebody does it and they're frustrated, they shouldn't feel frustrated that they're not getting it right. It will come through at the end.
I love that too, that you said trust the process. I think that came that always kind of comes through in this, but it's one of the things I love about having that group, like you put it, Brian, is that everyone is bringing, at a different point in their life, they're bringing different skills and they're, these unique snowflakes, and we're all have different processes. And so there's something that's nice in the group about having weeks where people are in the zone and crushing it and other people are struggling, and that kind of changes each time, because it's not like there's teacher's pet who just always gets an A every session. It's like that everyone's on their own journey, but you've got that support and brother and sisterhood through the process as people go through their own valleys and their own peaks at different points.
I tried to get an A every time early on, and that just wasn't going to work. So
it was nice to be able to see people in different phases of the process. And even though we were all, kind of technically on the same assignment for the week, it was nice to see people either struggle or have a really strong week, because it felt like when it was your turn to do that, there was, you knew you had a support network and you knew there was somebody else who had been through the same thing that you had just been through. So that was really nice to know that you could reach out and somebody probably had a similar experience and you could connect on that.
I love too, I hadn't seen this before, but I love with your group, there was a lot of one-on-one connections in between sessions. And that's where, my head keeps on spinning, where, I love to do everything alone if I can. I just try to get as much done as possible. But this sort of work, I can't imagine doing it, without a guide like Craig and without a group. It's just like, it would be very hard to do this process in a book or, listening to a podcast. I feel like you need that group around you helping you along the way. And I really saw that come through with your group. Another thing I wanted to ask about, and I'll just kind of caveat for listeners, obviously this is like very deep personal work of identifying a purpose. And so I want to honor the confidentiality of the container we set, and that this just kind of the, honoring the personal nature of it. I just wanted to ask though, were there any things that you learned either about yourself, your mission, your purpose, personality, anything that you learned that you would be comfortable sharing with listeners?
Well, I struggled to admit how much I cared about the recognition that I received from other people, regardless of whether it was for something very small or for something very big. And I realized that in a lot of things that I've done in my life have not been necessarily for me. They've been important things, maybe, or they've been hard things and been challenging, but I embarked on completing them and doing them well so that at the end, a boss or a coworker or a friend would say, "Hey, great job." And I give you an example. This is sort of a funny example. It's not from the course, but I realized through the course that um, when I would go wine tasting with my friends, that I would always try to be the best wine taster because I wanted the people at that vineyard to go like, "Oh, you've got a great palate." And who cares, right? Like I was there with my friends and family, and we were having a great time. And it really didn't matter if I tasted the charred oaky notes of whatever wine we were drinking. And I realized that I did that in a lot of ways, not just in personal, but at work and with friends and family. And it gave me some pause to think about, is that really making me happy? And is that what I want to do? And so I've been working through that. And I think there's value in just recognizing that. And so it's not bad to be motivated by that attention that I'm getting. But recognizing why I'm doing something, it will help me, I think, do the right things in the right way.
I love that. I'm noticing that in myself as well. Like I view it as kind of the little boy in me that wants to be pat on the head and say "good boy," and it shows up. Anytime I'm in a group, if I say something, it's like I'm looking for the applause, and then when I don't get
Right.
that, I'll even feel deflated, and I'll start participating less. And just like I really like the way you said that because it's like not necessarily changing that, but just being aware of like, oh yeah, that's that part of me that that I view as yearning for approval or recognition, and then whether or not I want to feed into that or just move on is another thing.
Right.
How about you, Becky?
Yeah, I think oh man, I learned a lot of things, but I think like a lot of type A people, I'm my own worst critic. And one of the things that I realized, and I had this kind of big aha moment, I think right in the middle, towards the middle, was that I've been putting myself into this tiny box, and I have been limiting myself because I thought that I was only that I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough this, enough that. I mean, take your pick. I just didn't feel like I was good enough to do a lot of the things that maybe I wanted to pursue, or I mean, even, or the things that I am currently pursuing, like motherhood, and I think this process completely tore down my perspective on that. And I have been feeling so much joy at the idea that I have an identity outside of that box that I had put myself in. And that not only am I not that person, but I have unlimited potential to be whoever it is I want to be. And that for me was a real game changer. I don't know that I've gotten as much clarity as Brian has about where I want to go in the next few years, but I do know that I've noticed a shift in the way I talk to myself, and in the way that I interact with my family and my friends and my coworkers. I am feeling a lot more confident, and I'm also feeling like, okay, maybe I need a little bit of a respite from the not the process, but just kind of I need to take a little break where in place right now. But I feel really confident about how to move forward, and that like I've completely unlocked this other place to step into, and I'm really excited about that.
It's energizing just hearing you say that, and I recognize in my own life, and I think that veterans and non-military alike probably have this experience, but you do, I'll just speak for myself again, like I've let myself be put in boxes. I've put myself in boxes and spend years just content in this cage that I've constructed and not realizing like, oh, I viewed myself as someone who does or does not behave a certain way. And I love that freedom. I just picture you, stepping out of this box and stretching out and being able to, I know that it's an overused phrase, but like spread your wings and really choose where you want to go and put your energy and open doors that you might have previously closed. I think that's really, really powerful. I was curious your thoughts on maybe just broadly speaking, if someone was thinking or if someone is struggling with identity or purpose or what's next, what advice would you have for them about considering this, like whether or not it would be the right fit for them or how to even approach the thought of doing something like this?
I think for me, this for me was like a no-brainer to hop in here and do this. I do think though it takes a commitment. So certainly being ready, and it was a bigger commitment than I initially thought. So being ready to jump in, and it's not just the doing the reading and working through the modules. There is so much self-reflection, and then we as a group made a lot of time for, as you mentioned, the one-on-one. And so there, that was a commitment that I made, just not just to myself but to the entire group. And so I think being prepared to make that commitment for 3 months is something that you have to be ready for. Obviously life will throw things in your way and you can't anticipate those, but I think having that knowledge going in. But I also, on the other side, I think it's probably a great fit for just about anyone who wants to who wants to know more about themselves, who wants to know more about where they're headed, maybe professionally, but also you're going to uncover some things personally. And knowing, where you're headed personally too, was, I think, something that we all discovered, but maybe unintentionally. So just being, mentally prepared for that.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I think what I would offer is, Becky did talk about the commitment. So there's certainly a time commitment. There's an emotional commitment. There's a financial commitment. There's a bunch of commitments to this. I'd say if somebody is looking for a quick fix and just, like they just don't quite have their head screwed on straight and they just want to kind of get in and get out, this is probably not for them. And I think it takes somebody who's willing to be self-critical, but also self-accepting. So if somebody just absolutely refuses to kind of analyze their life and look at where they're at, this probably wouldn't be a good fit for them. And there might be a time in your life where you're just not ready for that. And so I think that's okay. I've got some friends who I've thought like, oh, maybe this would be good for them. And I'm like, no, they're not ready, or they're just not at this moment in their life. I think people don't need to be worried whether they're happy or sad or depressed or whatnot. I think you can enter this purpose mapping process kind of from any perspective or any sort of emotional state. I'm not planning on getting out of the Navy for at least 3 more years. So you don't have to be transitioning from one giant, commitment to another commitment. Like if you were getting out, you don't have to be doing that. So I think it's for somebody who's got the time, who's got the willingness to be, to self-analyze what's going on. I think those are the big keys. You gotta be willing to do the work.
I appreciate that from both of you and in your answers, but the sense I get of like the both time and courage it takes to commit to something like this. And I just want to honor both of you. Like I would say this for everyone from our group, but you two just dove in and did not hold back. And there are definitely speed bumps where it would be easy to check out or to bail, but you both showed so much courage in not only like revealing who you are to the group, but to yourself, and just going really deep in 3 months is a long time, but in some ways it's a short time. You guys just burrowed down, which was so awesome and inspiring to see. Last question I have for each of you is, and I know you've probably touched on this already a little bit, but just, now that moving forward from here, what are you most excited about based on this new information that you have, this new community, this new perspective?
I'll jump in. I said earlier that there's days where I wake up and I just feel like there's not enough time in the day. Certainly I did come up with a very particular mission, and I have some real action steps that I want to take. And all of that is great, but I think what I'm most excited about is I have a much better process to do that again. So either, 2 years, 3 years from now, I've completed this mission, or for whatever reason I didn't get there, I have a process to not be on a raft just floating around the ocean. I can build a sailboat and I can get where I want to go to in the future. And so that's pretty exciting. I'm sort of kicking myself that I didn't find this, 20 years ago, because I kind of look in hindsight and think, man, how much could I have done, had I known this a long time ago. But I'm thankful that I know it now. And, hopefully I'll live to be 100. I'll get to execute a whole bunch of missions between now and then. I probably have a couple good glasses of wine along the way. But, that's what I think I'm most excited about, is I have a process to go forward from.
I love that too. I'm so glad you said that. As you were speaking, I was about to say that because, I think for myself of like every 4 or 5 years where I realize in retrospect where I'm like, oh yeah, I was like reorienting and rediscovering who I was. And I love that sense of having this process going forward. But I definitely look back and I'm like, man, I can definitely see at least one point in my life where I'm like 2 or 3 years where I was just spinning around. I'm like, I wish I would have had this, but also just kind of remembering what you had said earlier. It's just trusting the process and realizing like, I believe I kind of came to this at the right point, and for you as well. But I do like that sense of having a toolkit to be able to apply moving forward and having a deeper understanding of myself. How about you, Becky?
Yeah, Justin, I also want to acknowledge, what you said at the end of that last question, which was that you were, glad that Brian and I had been able to dive in. And I just wanted to say, a lot of that is thanks to you and Craig. You both created a space and a forum for us to do that, and that you made it safe enough for us to share those things about ourselves. And that was really impactful. And I think, we all kind of got there in different, some of us were maybe a little more reticent to share at first than others because we, needed to build some more trust, but we all got there, and it was an incredible experience to be able to do that with 8 other human beings. Right. And so that, thank you. And, thanks to Craig. But in terms of what I'm taking forward with me, I think number one, the relationships that I've made. I have a much stronger relationship, I think, with my brother now, which is amazing. And I didn't necessarily see that coming. So I was really excited. And then I think, I made friends in that cohort that I can see being friends with for a very, very long time. And not only that, but I love that we are going to check in with each other and that we hold each other, maybe not accountable, but just to say like, hey, how's it going? What can I help with? Do you want to bounce anything off of me? I love having that group. I'm an introvert by nature, and so I don't tend to reach out to people, and I'm finding myself wanting to connect with some of the people in the group moving forward, and to kind of keep tabs and touch base. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm just really excited again, I don't have the same kind of, I think I'm still refining my my mission maybe, but I am really excited about my vision. I'm really excited about my understanding of who I am and kind of what space I want to live in, and how to better create that for myself. I think, my job has always been important to me, and I want to be of service, but I think what has become really important to me in the last few years especially is my relationships with my friends and family, and maybe people that I don't know yet, but those relationships are paramount for me, and I have so many tools to build those relationships even stronger that I'm just excited to do that. So
I love that. And on that piece of the relationships, I think, um, I think that when you're in the pressure cooker with people for an extended amount of time and you get that level of vulnerability and trust, I think it does allow you to engage differently. Like so many conversations I have, you're just kind of swimming on the surface or presenting the Instagram image of everything. And it's nice to have people where you've just let the force fields down, you let the guard down, and you can have those authentic conversations. And even as you said, maybe not challenging and holding accountable directly, or maybe that's true too, but providing that support, other vantage point, and being able to have those authentic conversations. So Becky and Brian, thank you both so much. I know you have both have busy schedules, but I appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us and join us on Beyond the Uniform.
Thanks, Justin.
yeah, thank you.
Surface.
Beyond the Uniform is written and produced by me, Justin Nassiri, with help from our Chief of Staff, Steve Bain, our editor, Kathleen Dillon, and our head of social media, Janelle Hanf. We are all volunteer organization and would greatly appreciate your help in any of the following 3 ways. First of all, spread the word. Beyond the Uniform has over 360 podcast episodes and 15 on-demand webinars, all offered for free. Help us spread the word on social media, at military bases, or whatever gets the resource in front of the men and women who need it. Positive reviews on iTunes go a long way towards this as well. Second of all, sponsorship. Beyond the Uniform relies on financial sponsorship to keep us going. There is so much more we'd like to do as well, but just don't have nearly the resources to do so. If you know of a company that would advertise in any way with Beyond the Uniform, please send them our way. Third of all, donations. If you're in a financial position to donate, you can find more information on the support section of our website. At our website, beyondtheuniform.org, you'll find over 360 episodes categorized by industry, functional role, and more. You'll also find both free and for purchase resources that take a deeper dive on topics related to career growth. Thank you for your support as we aim to help members of the military community thrive in their post-military career and life.